out of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Nicole, would you do roll call to ensure a quorum, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Popson,
Here.
Councilmember Streetman,
Here.
Councilmember Moy,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan, Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Is she joining us by phone?
She is not.
Not for this. Okay. Councilmember, Mayor Carroll,
Here.
Councilmember Pounds.
Here,
You have a quorum?
thank you. First item is approval of previous meetings minutes. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion to approve. Second.
Comments, changes, edits? Nicole?
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan, Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll, Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item 3 is citizen comments. We do not have any comments tonight. So our next item is financial statements with Debbie, and you've got this in your packet and hopefully on the screen here shortly. So Debbie?
Sure. So we are 2 months into the city's fiscal year. The expenditure target would be 17%. Revenues are approximately where we would expect them to be this time in the fiscal year, meaning there is no accommodations revenue yet recorded. We have received some in September, but as of August, just due to timing, there were no accommodations revenues. Some hospitality tax and general fund revenues that are generally in line with budget, with the exception of rental licenses. And I wanted to talk briefly about that. You all have heard of the South Carolina State Business License Standardization Act. This is where statewide, there will be a mandatory standard for the reporting year and the reporting period for gross, and the due dates and license year for business licenses. The city's general business licenses align well with that new standard, timing wise, but rental licenses do not, because their reporting period is the fiscal year, not the calendar year. So in order to transition into the state requirement, after much thought and consideration and consultation with MASC, the city implemented an interim rental license year with a 6-month reporting period. This is the normal time that rental licenses would be renewed. So people are renewing, but at half the cost. This will catch up later on in the fiscal year when the rental licenses will have to be renewed again as part of the normal business license renewal. Nobody will have to pay any more than they would normally have paid. The city won't receive any more than it would normally have received. It's just that timing will be different. And in this 1 year, we probably will see more rental license revenue than we normally would. But it will catch up over time. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
So I also wanted to report that the city did receive in September the $508,000 county A tax pass-through. We had been talking about this during COVID. The county had said they weren't going to do those distributions, but the county's accommodations experience was similar to the city's, very good considering, and so they reinstated it. And it was received in September, but will be accrued back into FY21. In September, the city closed on a municipal lease, and it's very similar to a loan, for the new fire engine and some related equipment, including the SCBA equipment that the city has been kind of saving for over time. The total financed was $875,000 for 10 years at a rate of 1.6%. So we have the money. The truck will be delivered, we think, in October, November. I also wanted to report that the city received assessment information from Charleston County for the purposes of setting the millage rate, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a few schedules. Total assessed value increased by approximately 2% over the prior year. And the city has 26.6 million in cash deposits. 5 million of that total represents unspent bond proceeds, and 8.8 million is restricted for tourism-related expenditures or beach preservation.
Let's go back to the big check we finally received, says $506,000,
508.
508. So would that be a journal entry? Since we're on the accrual basis, that funds the accrual basis, and it's going to go back to 21. So without increase our net positive result.
It will. And the journal entry's been made.
I mean, it was in the forecast from conversations we've been having on where they take the surplus.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, moving on, we'll touch briefly on some tourism and local option sales tax revenue. I mentioned there was no receipts for August, but we did receive a July payment, so you can see that there. Very nice result. So accommodations revenues continue to be strong. We have not received any state quarterly tax payments yet for accommodations. The Charleston County pass-through, we received the 508 after this was printed, but it's going to go here in the second payment of FY21. Hospitality tax, we had a second good month. And you can see, if you look historically, very strong June and July for food and bev.
Lot of drinking.
Or eating.
A lot of happiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's double over the last year.
Beach preservation fee, it's a repeat of Muni A tax, you can see. Really good performance there. Local option sales tax, again, good news, 117,000. This was one of the last revenues we were holding the books open for FY21. So again, this is a FY21 revenue, but it's just another indicator that economic activity is very strong. Moving on to drainage, the project worksheet. We had some Thomas and Hutton engineering expenses and a Gulfstream construction pay at 4. That's on the small internal projects. Still $165,000 left on that contract. Moving on to Marina. Not a whole lot happening there. We had an ATM bill for construction admin for about $5,000. We paid in August. Okay, the next schedule is very busy, as Philip says. This is a schedule we keep on assessed values, just so we can look over time. The data comes from Charleston County, and we received it a couple of weeks ago. So we drop those numbers in, make sure they look reasonable based on trends, and then use those numbers to calculate an estimate, and the county does this too, an estimate of what the property tax revenue is going to be using our current millage rates. And then compare that to what our budgeted revenues are. And if the numbers indicate that we're going to make the budget, there's no reason to increase property taxes, which I know is what y'all want to hear. So when we run those, a couple of things I wanted to point out on the schedule that are just interesting. If you look at real property, and that's the top two highlighted numbers, real property 4% versus real property 6%. For the first time in on the schedule, the real property at 6% totals declined. So there was a shift to 4%, which indicates more full-time residents, less second home or rental properties. Or it could be value. It doesn't necessarily mean it is individual homes. It's because this is assessed value. But it's an indicator, I think. It is interesting. The collection rate.
Philip, I do have a question. Do we have a way of knowing per unit count versus total gross dollars? Because if you look at a lot of high value properties that are becoming occupied or second homes or favored tax status for people relocating here during COVID, is this an indicator of what's happening during COVID, or is this a trend? And I know you probably don't have that answer, but it'd be really interesting to know on a unit basis if the data exists.
I think we can get,
Yeah.
we've done it before, right? When we've done analysis of,
Yeah.
on the TMS level.
Isn't that some of the information that the planning commission's seeking? Looking at Douglas back there, I know he's close to that.
Yeah.
That type of,
Yes, we do have that data. And we'll be reporting.
Thank you.
Maybe, we need again, I forgot, what is that real property agricultural?
so there is a piece of property, and I think it's within Wild Dunes, that for some reason has, I think it's like marshy
A farm.
property, and has an agricultural designation.
Just so everybody knows, we're talking about 4%, 6%. It's still considerably higher at 6% properties. It went down a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Look at the overall numbers, it's more than twice.
Oh, yeah.
So this is overall numbers, it may have gone down, but when you put good numbers, it's more than twice.
Mhm. One other thing I wanted to mention was the collection rate. It's just interesting to me that it's come down, but only slightly. And I've always been suspect of the collection rate that the county indicates there, because I feel like we're probably much closer to 100% collectability. And then the gross tax base, you can see the 2.3% increase from the prior year. And then further on down in the calculation of estimated or projected property tax, when we do the calculation, it shows that we are short about $84,000. But that does not concern me for several reasons. And you can, if you look historically, there have been other years in which we were short on the calculation. But then if you go further down and see the actual that was collected, we always beat the projection by 6 figures. So historically, we always end up better. I think the collectability percentage that calculation is based on is a little conservative. And I think our lost revenue, which would also figure into here, is going to be, as indicated earlier, it's running high, so it will be above budget, which will help make up that difference too. So I think what we would be looking for is approval from this committee to authorize Desiree to confirm the current millage rates for the property tax bills that will be going out in September, October.
Do it now, you want to do it later? It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda. I don't need this.
And then one other thing I wanted to mention is another thing that we need to do is confirm the local option sales tax credit factor. And the way we typically do that is we calculate the factor two ways, one based on our budget and one based on the most recent annual actual. And whichever is higher, we use that so that we are giving the maximum potential credit to taxpayers, which that's historically been the city's practice. We don't have to give back 100% of the local option sales tax credit, but we do. And so we want to be as generous with that as we can. So we use the higher of whether it's the budget or the most recent actual. And we'll probably be using the budget. Gives the best option. And Desiree also has to confirm that number for the county so they can print the tax bill. Okay. One more thing I have is just to touch on the legal schedule that we've been keeping. Philip and I were discussing this. I don't know that we need to continue to do this all the time, but given certain circumstances, this has been requested. So you can see it's sorted by total spent. FY21 and FY22 year to date. Any questions?
I'm amazed at the increase in aircraft taxes on the outbound. I guess it's cheaper out here to register than it is elsewhere, since we're the lowest tax limits.
Other questions, comments? No. Debbie, thank you. Next item that we've been doing the last few months with Desiree and doing project updates. You've got this in your packet, hopefully on the screen as well. With our major 5 or 6 major projects that we got going on. So, Desiree?
All right, I'll go ahead and start with the Marina restaurant renovation update. Have updates regarding the building. They've completed the exterior bar slab and bar framing. The second page has updated pictures too, so you might want to look at those as I give you all an update. They are about completed on the wall and overhead rough-in for electric and plumbing. They indicated last week that they're approximately 1 week out for inspections. The overhead sprinkler work and HVAC work is set to begin shortly. They've replaced the entire mechanical deck subfloor and installed new parapets and TPO roof. They've structurally repaired the mansard roofs, framed the new tower element at the entry that you can see, I believe, in one of the pictures on the third slide. Replaced about 70% of handicap entry deck. That's the ramp that will provide ADA access to the first floor. The siding will begin in the next couple of weeks, so we'll start seeing some more of the design elements there. The currently, as of the latest information that we have received from the restaurant folks, is that there are no plans for an elevator due to some structural challenges that they have encountered. Douglas and I, we were at the building last week and noticed that the area that had been identified as the location for the elevator had some stairs in it, and immediately contacted the restaurant folks and asked them what was going on. Contacted Rusty Chairville Property because the understanding per the plans that had been approved by City Council back in February and that were approved through the building department included an elevator. And I think that was a huge priority that this council wanted to see there. Their lease requires them to move forward with the construction per the plans that were approved by council. So we're waiting to hear back from them about alternatives to the addition of an elevator in the building. I believe that they're looking, I've heard from folks that have talked to the restaurant folks that they're looking at some alternatives. Hopeful that that's the case, and I'm waiting to hear back on what those are. I just want to full disclosure, it was, I've learned about it last week when I notified the chair of real property. And again, notified, I believe, the mayor, and started understanding what our options are and just plans moving forward to get this thing corrected.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you, Desiree, for the comments there. Just wanted to weigh in on this as chair of real property. I first learned of it last week too, when Desiree gave me a call that there had been a change there. And while I really appreciate all the work that's been going on down at the Marina Restaurant, we've been seeing that come together, and it's coming together very nicely, I think. I went back to the February 23rd meeting that we had, where we had the presentation of the floor design and by the owners, by the Marker 116 group, the family group. And it clearly was presented to the city, to the citizens, that we would have an elevator that would access up to the second floor. And that was specified at least twice in that presentation. It also was carried into the plans that were approved by Director Carr. And so that became part of the plans also. So, you know, we didn't know that this last minute change that we got confronted with last week had even been decided. So I'm a little disappointed in the way that that was approached. I would think as chair of real property, my approach would be that we ask Desiree to go back to the family group, have some more discussion. Let's see what kind of alternatives we have. There may be other things that they can do to, control some costs, so to speak, and shift some dollars over to try to accommodate this. We all know that we live on an island that's aging, you know, demographically speaking and geographically speaking too. But, an elevator in that location down there, beautiful spot, would certainly be appreciated by the citizens of this island. And I really think that we ought to look at what we have in the lease and work with them, and let's see if there's alternatives that they can come up with that they can make this happen, as per the promise we had in February.
Give me a word first.
Well, I just have a quick question, Desiree, about ADA compliance. You know, I'm not familiar with all the rules, but are they in compliance by not having an elevator?
I believe, and Douglas may need to help me on this, but I believe that they are ADA compliant. They're not required to put an elevator. And I think it's due to the fact that the building is not fully being rebuilt, if you will. There is a ramp that provides ADA access to the first floor. It is my understanding from information that's been provided by the restaurant tenants that the food menu that's going to be offered on the third floor will be the same one offered on the second floor. The second floor, I'm thinking second floor, first level, but in the first or second floor, depending on how you look at it, I don't want to confuse anybody. We'll also have a back deck, an open area that will have a very similar ambiance, if you will, to the third floor, offering that to folks. But I think, ultimately, without an elevator, you wouldn't have full ADA access to that third floor.
Well, y'all are on it. I just wanted to have an explanation.
Very similar. Douglas, is probably more of a question for you. I know when we built our building, we were required to have handicap access to the first floor back in 1990. But the building exceeded 50% in value in construction. I would assume that any building exceeding 50% value in reconstruction would have to comply with ADA. Am I correct or wrong?
You are, but they are the way.
Douglas,
Should-
you mind coming up here? Thank you.
So there are three considerations with the ADA compliance factor. First, because they are less than 3 stories, they're exempted from the need for an elevator. Secondly, it is an existing condition, so they're given some latitude there. And then thirdly, as Desiree has correctly said, because they have access to the first floor, and because there will be the same menu in all parts of the building, that's the guidance that we've been given, that would make them compliant with the ADA standards.
Thank you. I just did that more for the public's general purpose.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would, just a couple of comments. Number one, that the ADA compliance is obviously the bare minimum. It's a requirement. We haven't given our real property update for city council, and I won't steal any thunder, but our committee talked a lot about this city wanting to be a leader as it relates to Americans with disabilities, and not necessarily, again, doing the bare minimum. And that we really want to, at least from our committee, we'll see how the council votes, but we'd like that to be something that we're known for, that we are providing accessibility, whether it's to the beach or to city-owned properties. And I think that's why this was such an important part of the approval from city council. So my question is actually, we hired a group to do oversight on our behalf to make sure that construction is going according to plan. And it sounds like the group is making sure that quality construction is taking place, and that there's no concern whatsoever from that regard. But we have a huge deviation from the plan. And so my first question, I guess, is what is the role of the Insight Group in terms of, we set an approved plan, the building department approved a plan, and yet it's not being followed?
Yeah. It is my impression, that's a good question, and it is my impression that the work that was done to basically seal off the column that was there for the elevator, I think it had just been done. So I don't know that Insight had even seen it. They're there weekly, but they are actively framing it. So it was kind of my
Okay.
impression that had happened like days prior to us seeing.
Okay.
But, and they are catching things that are contrary to the plans. And that's part of the process when things can't be executed exactly as they are on the plans. It then creates kind of a loop with their engineer to get that remedied.
Okay.
So they're definitely doing that. They're definitely referencing the approved plans. And I believe they would have found that at their next inspection.
Okay. You and Desiree were just too quick.
Yeah, we're just good. We're good like that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, just a final comment to kind of put a bow on all of that. I think we want to have a really good relationship with all of our tenants, everybody that we work with all of our businesses. That goes without saying, hopefully. But in this case, there's a deviation from what we agreed upon. So, we're looking to really city staff to try and come up with a solution. Obviously, I know Rusty, the chairperson of Real Property, is working closely with you and the families group as well to come up with a resolution. So some of this just to make sure that we've got the Insight Group doing what they need to do. And, maybe just echo what Rusty, the charter he gave to you, Desiree.
Yes, and just so you all are aware, we have been communicating with the restaurant group. We try, obviously, with this kind of issue in terms of where they are in construction, time is of the essence. So we're trying to coordinate schedules from, everybody involved, people who have other jobs, other commitments. So we're hoping that very close after tomorrow, we have a sit down and an opportunity to just problem solve, forward looking, and try to figure out what we can do to facilitate any issues or concerns that they're having, and serve as a resource to the restaurant group as we move forward collaboratively on this project that we're all excited about. Oh, anything else? All right, well, other than that, the progress on the restaurant is going very well. You can see some pictures there of the areas. The restaurant dock improvements, as you all know, we're going to be doing some aesthetic improvements to the section of the dock that they're leasing. We've we're able to secure 2 proposals, trying to get a third one, but I guess people are so busy that they're not getting back to us. But we got 2 proposals. One's from Salmon Dredging, which was the lowest proposal of the 2. So I'll authorize that work and have them move forward with those improvements while Salmon Dredging is on site doing the Marina Doc Rehabilitation project. The parking lot improvements, that private parking lot at the bottom, at the back of the marina site, that work has been completed successfully. So that's good. We'll move forward to Marina Doc Rehabilitation. So I have made some updates to the one y'all have. So I don't know if it doesn't look like the one you have in your packet. So just look at the screen and I'll talk about that one. So the final pressure testing was completed this weekend on Saturday. They scheduled the first round of bacterial testing on Monday, and the second round was supposed to be completed today. I have not yet received confirmation that whether this was completed, but that was the plan as of yesterday. The water is turned on, electrical is turned on. The water should not be used by anybody until the testing comes back and those results are made public. So just for anybody out there, do not use the water. And electrical is on. However, Brian and Tyler have not yet checked every pedestal. We'll be monitoring those for the next few days to identify any issues. But other than that, the docks have been turned over to Brian for use, and they have been instructed by the contractor to start mobilizing the vessels on the charter docks to the new restaurant and phase docks. That is expected to be completed by Thursday, when Salmons will be mobilizing a crane and ridge to start the demo of the Finger Pier charter docks. Anybody who's been there in the past few days have seen that there was a bit of an accident. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, but 2 piles and 2 finger piers got knocked out. The mayor had a brilliant idea to see if they would give us a discount on the demolition. Thankfully, again, those are scheduled to be demolished this week. So not, no issues there. In terms of the fuel dock, they are Structure Marine, which is the dock manufacturer. They continue to seek alternate suppliers for specific aluminum extrusions that are required to build a fuel head platform. That it's not currently available in Canada due to ongoing supply chain issues associated to COVID. The fabrication of the floats continue, it's ongoing, but will not be able to be completed and delivered until those alternative materials are available and identified. Phase 3 drainage, we have great news on that. The bid package for the construction of the 30th and 36th Avenue, the one we also refer to as Forest Trail, are complete and have been advertised. The mandatory pre-bid meeting is this Friday morning. The bid opening is scheduled for mid-October, and we should be able to meet our proposed approval schedule for council to approve the construction contract by the end of October. This schedule is contingent on receiving the remaining permits in time. We're still waiting for 2 U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits. The engineers are in constant communication with Army Corps. Initially, those should have been were expected by end of August. I guess everybody is delayed somewhat, but they're in progress. No major issues have been found, so we're expecting those to be produced before the bid deadline. Those will then be added to the bid package as an addendum. Here you can see just an updated bidding and construction timeline. And I'll take a cue from Debbie's book. preliminary, estimated, approximate, as we see how all these projects just, they're very complicated and delayed. So should everything go according to plan, we should be getting substantial completion of those two outfall projects by August of 2022. As you know, 41st Avenue is scheduled to begin in the fall, winter of 2022. In coordination with the improvements and elevation of the Waterway Boulevard path. A quick update on the Phase 3 drainage internal project. The only one that's pending is one portion of the 41st Avenue project. The detour plan has been approved by the city. We've been coordinating with a contractor on the start date. Our charge to them was to try to minimize the weekends where we have to maintain that area closed. So we're hoping and directing them to start the project on a Monday rather than a Thursday, so that we don't have, without any need, have to detour and block access to 41st Avenue. And then no updates from last month on the overhead and underground electric conversion. That's all I have.
Yes, right. Just for the public's knowledge, how many permits did we have to get? 13?
14,
14 permits.
correct. 14 for 3 outfalls. How about that?
Amazing. Anyway,
That's one word. Other comments, questions? Thank you, Desiree. All right, we will move to old business. Our first item is discussion of alternatives for the allocation of 30% of the ATAX funds collected that must be used for advertisement and promotion of tourism currently managed by the Charleston Visitors Bureau. We have with us Ray Burns, who is the chair of the ATAX committee. And Ray, if you'll just come on up, just a quick background. I know we've been talking about this, I'd love to say months, but it's really been years around this topic. And we're not here tonight to vote on anything. The ATAX committee is not ready to make a recommendation. I asked Ray to come and give us an update. They've had multiple meetings this year with CVB, without CVB, amongst themselves, and it just felt like it was a good time to have a conversation from a status update standpoint before we get to a potential decision somewhere later this year or early next year. So Ray, thank you for joining us.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. The Charleston Area Visitors Bureau, which I'll call CVB from this point forward because it's too much of a mouthful, has been the city's designated nonprofit direct marketing organization for the 30% tourism promotion funds for over 20 years. For the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, CVB was paid $733,000. And over the past 10 fiscal years, Isle of Palms has paid CVB $5.3 million. The ATAX committee was given the assignment to research alternative nonprofit direct marketing organization options. And in doing so, we studied the performance and transparency of the existing relationship with CVB. First, I'll go into the option of the alternative DMO. South Carolina Code of Laws 6-4-10 provides that a municipality shall select one or more organizations. And I repeat that, stress that is one or more organizations to manage and direct the expenditure of the tourism promotion funds. A municipality may create its own nonprofit organization for this purpose. To understand the alternatives, we selected Folly Beach as a case study. Folly formed their own nonprofit DMO called the Folly Tourism and Visitor Promotion Committee, which they call TVPC, over 10 years ago. The reason Folly formed their own DMO is because they wanted a more targeted marketing effort specifically benefiting Folly, as opposed to being a part of the CVB general Charleston area marketing. In 2015, TVPC decided to form a relationship with an outside professional marketing agency for the purpose of managing the advertising expenditures. We held numerous phone calls and in-person meetings with Folly personnel to learn everything we could. And those meetings included a call I made to the ex-Folly Beach CFO, who was the gentleman who formed and managed the initial years of the DMO. A meeting was held with Folly Beach City Administrator and Director of Finance with Desiree and Debbie Suggs and myself to discuss from the city's point of view, how does it work? What, if there are the problems, what, the whole aspect of the relationship between the nonprofit DMO and the city. A call was made that I made a call to the current chairman of the TVPC to discuss what they do, how they do it, the satisfaction they have with their marketing organization, and so on and so on. And lastly, a meeting was held, and I've had a number of subsequent phone conversations with senior management at Folly Beach's advertising agency of choice, which happens to be a local Mount Pleasant agency. I want to emphasize that Folly Beach City Administration, City Finance, committee members, and advertising agency have been extraordinarily helpful to us in this whole process. The Folly Beach TVPC operates independent of the city administration. It's its own nonprofit organization. The 7-member committee is comprised of a cross-functional group very similar to our ATAX committee, where you have members from hospitality, from lodging, from cultural, and at large, as well as a city staff liaison. They prepare a budget for planned expenditures and submit it to the city for approval. A major component of the Folly Beach TVPC budget is the management of the TVPC website. Visit folly.com. In addition to the website, TVPC budget includes the annual payment to Charleston Area Visitors Bureau, CVB ads, targeted online digital ads in selected markets such as Atlanta, Knoxville, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, Columbus, Ohio, Raleigh. And they also have print ads in magazines such as Southern Living, Coastal Living, and Garden and Gun. The contracted advertising agency created the website and does the ongoing management and updates to the website. The annual budget for the TVPC is $360,000 for fiscal 22. All financial transactions are managed by the Folly Beach City Finance Group. It's city manages the money. It's, even though the nonprofit budgets, they have to submit to the city for payment to their suppliers. The Visit Folly.com website promotes all of Folly Beach businesses, including rental providers, restaurants, shops, and service providers such as fishing charters, surfing lessons, beach rentals of chairs and umbrellas, you name it. It should be noted that this service comes at no cost to the Folly businesses. Each business has a clickable tab on the Folly Beach website to link to their own business website. By comparison, CVB requires an Isle of Palms business to pay an annual membership fee to be listed on their website. However, understand that all Isle of Palms short-term rental licensees paid into the $733,000 that we just paid CVB, but you would have to pay an additional amount to be listed on the website. Now I'll get into Charleston Area Visitors Bureau. Well, actually, I have something else to say about Folly. Just wanted to make sure you're listening. Within the Folly Beach TVPC for fiscal 22, the budget includes a budget of $25,000 payment to CVB. So in that $360,000, $25,000 is for CVB. In addition, within the 22 budget is an additional $22,000 to CVB to pay for targeted Folly Beach ads in the 2022 CVB Visitors Guide and Wedding Guide. Isle of Palms receives no ads in either publication despite paying the $733,000. Like they are doing with their annual marketing plan, Folly is using their money on targeted expenses, even including within their relationship with CVB. Okay, now I'm ready for Charleston Visitors Bureau. We have been open and transparent with Charleston Area Visitors Bureau throughout this process. The joint meetings held over the past 7 months include a March 19th meeting. We invited the CVB VP of Business Development to present to the ATAX committee regarding their plans for the year and how our tax dollars are being spent. We received no meaningful financial information and were referred to a staff accountant. On July 29th, I attended a meeting at Wild Dunes Resort with CVB CEO CVB, as well as the Wild Dunes executive leadership to discuss concerns and performance. August 11th, the CVB CEO and Wild Dunes executive leadership were invited to present to the ATAX committee. They discussed the success of CVB promoting Charleston area and group sales for Wild Dunes. Despite questions regarding our tax funds, how our tax funds are being spent, no information was provided. On September 8th, the CVB CEO and Wild Dunes executive leadership attended our ATAX meeting and were allowed to present to the committee. They presented their willingness to address committee concerns and objections. At that point, I didn't know where we were going, so I made a list of things that just in the short term I felt they needed to address, and they're planning on coming back to us on October 27th with their corrective actions to those objections, basically. The Charleston Area Visitors Bureau has been remarkably successful in marketing the Charleston region throughout the country and the world. There is no disagreement with that fact. However, there is a disagreement on the use of our accommodation tax funds. Some of our concerns that we vocalized with them are that we have repeatedly asked CVB to show us how the Isle of Palms funds are being spent in the best interest of Isle of Palms. The problem is that CVB commingles all of the Isle of Palms funds together with all of their other sources of funds. There is no way to track how the Isle of Palms funds are being spent. When this question is posed, the standard answer is a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, we've told them that is no longer an acceptable response. An ATAX committee member followed up with the CVB offer to speak to their accountant back from our March 19th meeting and was given a contact to call. The committee member made the call and he was told by the accountant that he did not have the right for that information, meaning our committee member did not have the right to receive that information. Another concern we have is we have no formal agreement with CVB. The business relationship has no measurements, it has no goals, and it has no objectives. Their objectives are marketing Charleston area, and those are their goals and objectives. There's no objectives having to do specifically with Isle of Palms. Isle of Palms is sole sourced on tourism promotion. Where else do we spend $733,000 with no competitive bidding? By way of comparison, Folly in fiscal 20, Folly paid CVB $20,000. Sullivan's paid them $6,000. We paid them $733,000. There are 10 businesses on Isle of Palms that are CVB members, which pay a total of $166,000 to CVB over and above what the city pays for the memberships. 5 of the 10 members are vacation rental businesses. The 5-member vacation rental businesses get rental referrals through the CVB website. Non-members are not listed and get no referrals. There are 10 vacation rental companies on Isle of Palms. 5 are members, 5 are not. 5 get referrals, 5 don't. However, understand again, I'm repeating myself, but understand again that all short-term rental licensees pay into the $733,000 that was paid to them. However, only member companies get direct marketing support. As of fiscal 2020, there are, because we don't have any better numbers, 1,474 short-term rental licenses on Isle of Palms. Again, there are the 10 rental companies on Isle of Palms, 5 of which are members. I estimate 25 to 30% of that 1,474 are represented, short-term rental licensee holders are represented by the CVB member companies. Point being, there's a majority of the short-term rental licensees that receive no direct marketing support from CVB, even though they are paying into the accommodations tax. And only the 5 CVB members are getting supported. The state law reads, before the beginning of each fiscal year, an organization receiving funds from the accommodation tax from a municipality or county shall submit for approval, and I'll say that again, for approval, a budget of planned expenditures. At the end of each fiscal year, an organization receiving funds shall render an accounting of the expenditures to the municipality or county which distributed them. That's verbatim, word for word state law. We have never received the budget for approval, nor have we ever received an accounting of expenditures from CVB. The South Carolina Supreme Court came out with a ruling having to do with FOIA and expanded into accountability and transparency of nonprofit direct marketing organizations receiving accommodations tax funds. I believe you folks all received some communication on that in the past week. This ruling has gotten the attention of the South Carolina Tourism Expenditure Review Board, or TURC. TURC followed the Supreme Court ruling with a memorandum this past month detailing new reporting requirements. It will require documentation, including the annual proposed budget for the DMO, which will need to be reviewed by the Local Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee and then approved by the Municipal City Council. In addition, the DMO is required to submit an accounting to the City Council at the end of the fiscal year. So they're cracking down. CVB sent a letter out just in the past few days responding to the new TURC reporting requirements. This document is nothing more than an exercise of allocating our tax funds to their activities. This is not a budget. There is no information about actual expenditures, and based on the information supply, I could not vote to accept this as a budget because it's not a budget. Okay, conclusion, where do we go from here? I encourage City Council to consider the option of Isle of Palms creating its own nonprofit direct marketing organization for the purpose of tourism promotion. The vision is to have the DMO contract with an outside advertising agency to create an Isle of Palms tourism promotion website to work for all Isle of Palms residents, businesses, and tourists. Once the website is created, a targeted internet marketing strategy would be developed by the DMO committee. The committee would submit a budget to City Council with specific targets and activities for approval during the new fiscal year budgeting time. There would be specific metrics put in place to measure the success of the targeted advertising. We do not need to market Isle of Palms for the summer months. We are full. The concept would be to target markets for off-season business in any other target market for the committee that the committee would feels worth pursuing, such as weddings, reunions, and specific activities such as fishing or just walking on the beach. The vision includes the continued funding of CVB, just not all of our money. CVB successfully markets off-season rental business for the island and group sales for Wild Dunes Resort. The funding of CVB would be intended to target this effort. The CVB funding would be contingent upon them providing a detailed budget for approval and end-of-year review of expenditures. The committee budget would suggest how the money is divided between the DMO and CVB. Then Ways and Means can review and modify, and the city council will then review, modify if desired, and approve the distribution. So there's gates to get through till it's decided. This will create a level of oversight that currently is not in place. The goal of splitting the ATAX money would be to create competition for our tourism promotion dollars, achieve accountability and transparency with our tax dollars, institute oversight measures to comply with state law, and put metrics in place to measure the success or failure of the marketing efforts. In the interest of full disclosure, it should be noted that there is not unanimity on the ATAX committee concerning this vision. There are members of the committee who believe CVB has done an excellent job and there is no reason to make a change. But I feel as though if I'm representing the committee, you need to know that as well. And now I'll just open the floor for questions if there are any. Randy?
Yeah, this is sort of a combination for Debbie Suggs or Philip. And by the way, outstanding report. And, you know, I think I'll just make a comment. We've sat and watched sort of a passive ATAX committee up to this point, and these changes from my perspective are certainly welcome and long overdue. Having said that, just more for the public, if we look back 5 years ago, what were we paying the CVB? So, you know, I like trend lines and where this is going. And I think the public needs to understand we're in an uncapped pace, so we can look at our ATAX dollars and tourism growth on the island. But as we grow, so does this contributed effort. And we've watched, I think, in just the last year, $50,000 to $100,000 increase. Is that
so one of the problems, Randy, is that 2020 and 21 are anomalies.
Exactly.
You look at them and you say, well, so I've been trying to concentrate on like 2015 to 2019 because 20 and 21 are not
they're anomalies. But I think that the point when we look at finance across the board, and we start doing this in this council term, frankly, what is the trends telling us? And the trends are telling us that this is going to continue. I mean, we have exceptional tourism visitation on the island. And as this continues, if we don't take some action and stop just saying, well, that's the way we always did it, then we're going to continue to contribute and not have accountability for where the monies are being spent. So again, I commend the effort and thank you very much.
Yeah,
I don't, you know, if we have the numbers. Yeah.
so you said Debbie and Philip actually have the number.
Oh, or Desiree. Yeah.
I got it from Debbie, actually. Yes, Ray requested this spreadsheet that we can share with all of you, certainly. And for FY16, which 5 years ago, the total 30% that was transferred to the CVB was 521,595. And now for FY21, we transferred 733,419. I think for FY22, I don't have that number, but it's significantly higher than that.
Thank you.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ray, for the presentation. Incredibly informative. And thank you and the committee for all the work. Obviously, this is many months of work and many hours of your time. So very much thank you and appreciate that. This is more a comment, and maybe it's fairly obvious, but the new laws regarding reporting of budgets and expenditures, if we're unable to provide that information, we've got to pay that back out of our general fund. Am I right? If they say you have not shown us what we need to see, you gave that money to the CVB, you don't know how it was spent, and if we do not provide satisfactory accounting, we are liable for those funds, not the CVB. That's my point. We're the ones on the hook.
We have done everything that the purpose requires.
Certainly an extreme case.
In an extreme, the point being, the buck stops with us. We're the ones on the hook, no one else. So if we cannot provide adequate reporting, if Turk is stepping up their requirements and we're not following suit and stepping them up ourselves, we're the ones on the hook, no one else. That's my main point there. And I just want to reiterate one point that Ray said. You could actually take, from my estimation, everything off the table and home in on one thing, which is we don't have any sole source contracts for $700,000 a year. And if we want to get the highest level of service, and this is not a knock on the CV whatsoever, but in order to get the highest level of service from any provider, if they're sole source, it's just the way things go, you're not going to have the highest level that you would potentially have in a competitive bidding situation. And so unless we do that, we're never going to see the highest level of service that we could potentially get for our businesses and our community.
Mayor?
Ray, number one, out of 10 years I've been serving on Alpine, that's the best presentation I've heard. And I thank you and your whole committee for doing what you did. The target marketing, the off-season, you said in the summertime, we are booked. But in the off-season, I mean, there's a golden opportunity. And as John just said, it's the only one that doesn't have RFPs. I mean, there is competition out there that would be happy to put a proposal in. But again, thank you for your presentation. I think it
You're
was
welcome.
spot on.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Trustee.
Yeah, I'd like to say, Ray, thank you as well. And I've been following closely all the discussions you've been having on the accommodations tax committee. I've watched them all. I think it's good work that you and your committee have put together. And I too would like to see more of a competitive situation we have right here. I'm not saying that I'm with you. I think CVB does a lot of really great things for the Charleston market, but there is an opportunity here, I think, if we get the right plan in place to really maximize what the benefit would be for our island with targeted marketing. Thank you.
And still support CBD.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a very good point. This is not an all or nothing conversation. You said that, Ray. I mean, you can do kind of whatever you want to do to some extent, multiple organizations, combination, whatever. So that's a very good point that we're not talking all or nothing. We're not talking anything tonight other than just a report out on what these guys have worked on. And to echo everyone, thank you. Y'all have spent hours upon hours with a lot of people. So a lot of research, and I thank you for that.
Quick question.
Yes. Sorry, Kevin.
You just touched on it real quickly, but what's the temperature of your whole committee? Are you to the point of making a recommendation to this committee or council?
I guess I'll just be honest. I've been sort of trained that if you're not going to win the vote, you don't have a vote. So I'm afraid one issue is getting everyone to show up. And then the other issue is convincing one or two people that oversight and accountability is meaningful and makes a difference. At the last meeting, it would have been 3-3. So I didn't feel as though there was any point in bringing a vote to the table because I knew where it was going. So changed course at that point and went on into CVB with at least short term what I wanted to see from them, because I didn't know. Well, we're an advisory committee, so if we advise that you consider the option of a nonprofit DMO, that doesn't mean you're going to do it either, just because we're advising it. So I said to Helen Hill, CEO of CVB, a lot of letters here. I gave her like 5 things that they're just not meeting expectation on, that they need to fix immediately. And some of those things, I can't remember them all, but some of those things were immediately, I want ads in the wedding guide and the visitor's guide. There's no reason why we don't deserve that. I want a staff person from CVB at our meetings reporting what they've done for Isle of Palms since the previous meeting. And I didn't request this, but Helen Hill offered the option that she would have CVB create our own website. I'm a little bit leery about that because, you know, I'm into trust and verify, but but that's, she's coming back on October 27th with the response on the 5 things that I asked them to fix. And one of which I didn't ask her to fix, but one of which she's offering to create our own website that would have a link on from her CVB website, link to this website they are offering to create to give us what we're asking, what we're looking for, with all businesses being represented on the website, not just CVB member companies. I don't know if I answered your
No,
question.
you didn't. You did. Thank you.
Yeah, and Jimmy,
You just want to
Go ahead,
point. Excellent job, Ray. I really appreciate it. This has been talked about for many years, many years, but nobody stepped up to the plate, except for you. And I'm sure all the council are very appreciative of your hard work. This kind of reminds me of, I think it was last year, when CARTA, they presented their budget to us, and we've always just kind of rubber stamped it. And we always would say, hey, how about a beach shuttle? And for years and years, and it never happened. And council stood up and said, no, we're not going to approve this budget. And then all of a sudden, there was discussion about a beach shuttle. It's off to a slow start, but it's you know, we're finally getting something for the money that we were spending then there. So this is very much akin to what you've been doing, stepping up to the plate against the, you know, the mighty CVB. And I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Ray, and we're not charging your committee with this, you know, to me, Randy, to your point, you know, this number was 400,000, then 500, now it's approaching 800, and it's going to be $1 million before we roll over too far. You know, to me, this has been a very worthy exercise to have these folks run down this path and, you know, look at alternatives and see what we might want to do. To me, the longer term piece we need to attack, or not attack, but to have conversations with Columbia about is changing that 30% number. You know, that worked when you were building a brand and building, you know, a region to get people to come to. But we're kind of past that now. Now you're almost in a maintenance mode to some extent, and 30% is a very large number out of our pockets to go anywhere. I mean, we could keep that money here and do much more work with it than we could. So I'd love to see, and again, we're not voting on anything tonight, just a conversation, but I would love to see us work with our state legislators to at least start a conversation on getting this 30% number changed.
Totally agree.
That's neither here nor there. Ryan.
When you go through and Charleston's listed as the number 1 destination city again, you know, and how much do we have to put into that? You know, it makes you wonder. You go through and quick analysis, you go through and look, here's our off seasons in red, and there's a full-time season. I mean, you have to realize that this is where we need our help in the off season. And that's where we need to focus a lot of our money to. So try to keep these places, you know, they're coming.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Mayor.
One last little, tourism is a $14 billion industry, of which 2/3 comes from the coast. 1 out of every 10 jobs in South Carolina is tied to tourism. And again, as you said, we are booked in the summertime, but there are off seasons that are ripe for picking. But we need to target market to get those. I think, again, I applaud you for the presentation, but I also, I'm not taking anything away from CVB. They've done a great job, but it's a lot of money. Thank you for your candidness.
Kevin. Go ahead.
Well, I think the other good point that he brought up is accountability. You know, what are we actually getting? And can you define any of these things that we are getting or not getting? And I commend you on that too. I think that's a big point, let alone spending all the money that we're spending.
Thank you, Kevin.
Ray, thank you very much.
Okay,
For you,
thank you.
tell your committee, thank you. on our behalf. I know your vice chair is in the back here somewhere. All right, good conversation. Thank you all. Our next item is item B, update and discussion of American Rescue Plan funding allocation. I'll be glad when we can take this off the agenda. You know, the South Carolina was one of the last states to request the money from the Fed. That's happened. There's a portal put up. Debbie's done what we need to do to receive that money. So we're just in a wait mode at this point. So here we sit and almost end of September and still don't have it. So we'll keep watching and working with MASC and see what's going to happen there. But anyway, we've done everything we needed to do to make that happen. Separately from that, I'm sure you've been following the governor's program of Accelerate South Carolina. I think it's $8 billion-ish with a B of infrastructure money. So Desiree has sent a letter to Representative Bustos and Senator Campson requesting about a $4 million grant to help us with our drainage projects here. Our friends at the Water and Sewer Commission are doing the same thing. It is a load of money that is going to be very interesting to see how it gets doled out from HQ, so to speak, in Columbia. So I'm not sure how that's going to happen or the timing of it. It'll be similar to the American Rescue money where certain projects are okay, timelines are dictated to you on when you have to spend the money. So more to come on that unless you need to add something to it.
Phil,
So,
quick
yes.
question. Is there any way that we as council can help with our state legislators in making sure that it's not just Desiree with help reaching out to them, but that we are more proactive in what we're holding our own representatives accountable to the public? Because we, admittedly, we don't do that. And I fully appreciate the help in the background in doing this, but I honestly think Senator Campson and Joe Bustos need to understand that it's not just our city administration asking for these things. They represent us, and we should be asking of them as a council, be it through resolution or some other form, what our expectations of their representation look like.
And I think to Jimmy Ward's comment last meeting, setting aside money from our excess from fiscal 21 to have some lobbying efforts going on in Columbia, I think it's going to help that, Randy. This grant money, whether it's this bucket or another bucket down the road, because there are certainly other buckets out there, you need somebody dogging that constantly. I mean, it is so complicated to file and apply and initially find it. And kudos to Desiree and others that have found, this bucket that we can help take care of some of our drainage issues here, the current projects that we have going on. So long-winded answer to your question, there's definitely more we can be doing without a doubt. From
But
a
that's
united front.
I think an ask. So, we need some help on how we help.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, most of you, if not all, have relationships with these representatives, both our senator and Representative Bustos. So anything you can do, communicating directly to them that this is a priority for the city. It's something that we've been working on, particularly with phase 3 drainage. We've seen the potential funding gap that we're facing based on the new estimated numbers, and anything that could be done to communicate that it's also a priority for this policy setting body will certainly be helpful at moving the needle, if you will, to put the city in a position to benefit from some of this state funding that's going to be distributed. We don't know yet how, but get our ask in sooner rather than later. Ask. Oh.
What?
Mayor.
Yeah, I misquoted last time. 13 billion. I got a letter from Dwayne Parrish. Last year was $23.8 billion in tourism. And when you start talking about 30%, you start talking about drainage. We could use some of that money for walkovers going to the beach. I mean, we have drainage problems. We've got houses on septic tanks. People walking through that water. It's not the sight we want to talk about. But, we want beach access. We want people to come to the beach, but we want it to be done safely too. So how we allocate that money on the 3 point, and Horry County's number 1, Charleston County's number 2. So I just want to correct that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? All right, on to new business. Item A is approval of fiscal 22 millage rate of 0.0233. No property tax increase. We have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Seriously, is there any discussion?
What's not to like?
Nicole?
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item B, consideration and approval of amount not to exceed 25,000 to engage an executive recruitment firm to assist in the fire chief hiring process. A motion and a second.
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Thank you. Just real quick, this is, you see it's not labeled there where we're paying for this. This is an unbudgeted item that'll come out of the general fund professional services area. So we'll be able to cover it, but it is an unbudgeted item.
Yeah, and just so that give you an update, I have been requesting informally through an informal RFP process, if you will, proposals from different executive recruitment firms that have been recommended by other folks. So even though we're not having a competitive sealed bid process because of professional services is an exemption in our procurement code, I'm still requesting and going through a vetting process for engaging a firm. So once that's, if approved today, we would be, I would be engaging up to that amount with a company based on that assessment.
What did we pay last time for our national search for fire chief? What did we pay last time?
For the police chief.
chief.
Oh, but no, for fire chief.
Yeah.
We had a national search for a fire chief. We had numerous applications.
We did that in-house. We did not hire a
MUSC, that
firm.
type of thing.
I'm sorry?
Municipal Association of South Carolina. We use those kind of assets.
Yeah, well, we posted the job description on those websites and others that have a national reach. This would be more of a targeted recruitment effort to try to make sure that this process yields a successful outcome for the community.
Did we have like 150 some applicants?
Just, no, we only had 70.
75.
Yeah.
So was police chief, I guess.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, do we really need this outside firm? I mean, with you, running to, or trying to find somebody and the personnel committee, and now an interim fire chief who seems very knowledgeable and very experienced, wouldn't that be enough to be able to find a candidate?
I believe that this is the most, if not one of the most important positions in this community, for this city. I would support a process that's from the beginning starts in an objective way, and ensures that we find somebody with the key attributes that we have identified as wanting our fire chief to have. If ultimately this is going to be based on council's recommendation and amendments to the code that allows or provides the city administrator to present a recommendation to council for a candidate, want to make sure that we follow a structured and objective process to do so. We have an HR officer on staff, but I do think that the help of a national or an official recruitment firm should help in reaching out and ensuring that it's a well-vetted process and well-vetted candidates that are come forward. With everything that we have going on, I don't have the time to devote to as a comprehensive and objective process that I think this community and the department deserves.
Yeah, Kevin, the only add I was going to have to that, let's not forget we're down an assistant administrator. And, to Desiree's point, just in her defense, not that she needs me to defend her, when you see her car here, the number of hours she works and weekends, I don't think we ought to put that on top of her personal.
So quick question. And Desiree, this intent is not your general purpose search firm. The intent here is specialized search in fire, correct? So, with the council change to put the responsibility to bring forward a candidate instead of vetted through committees brought back, this really is professional assistance with somebody with fire knowledge and previous experience in search for fire to assist Desiree with the process.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this for 30 days and let the interim chief come in there and kind of get a look, see and feel for what we have. And then come back and readdress this next month.
What, let me just ask this about that. You know, Desiree's already done some legwork to do a bid, for lack of a better term, and have some conversations. You know, I don't, Mayor, my personal opinion, I would rather slow walk the process than push it out, in my opinion. And I think we can get to the same spot. I mean, if our interim chief can start later this week, hopefully, you know, we can be tying up a contract with a recruitment firm and kind of have them both going simultaneously without pushing it out too far. That's my opinion.
The other thing to consider too is that a typical search process is within, 90 to 120 days. The agreement that we have with the interim fire chief is not, it would end at, it's 3 months with the option to extend for an additional 2 months. So my goal would be to bring forward a recommendation to the city council for a permanent fire chief before that agreement ends. Because, we don't want to be in a position with no interim fire chief and no fire chief at the same time. So I guess my thought process was to get an interim fire chief in place and then immediately start working through a process to select and identify and select and recommend a fire chief, so that when the interim chief, leaves, we're handing over the department to the permanent fire chief.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we have some firms already in mind that we could reach out to? Have you
Yes, sir, I
decided on
have-
someone already that you like, that you want to conduct this search?
I have received 3 proposals so far. I'm expecting a 4th one this week. As I've been receiving, I've been vetting them, talking to references, just our typical process before we engage somebody.
Okay, and then the council member Bell's comment a while ago, these are firms that are set up and targeted to look for these type of municipal positions, right? Fire department, police chief, executive. I mean, executive recruiting can cut across the spectrum of all industry and
Correct.
municipality.
Yes, the ones that I have been talking to have experience in successfully finding candidates for municipal positions and including fire chief, police chiefs, and city administrators.
Yeah, okay. Well, in my past life, I tell you, the sooner you get started on a search like this for a position that's important, I think the better off you are. I think if you've already got a plan in place, we want to get someone with the technical experience, get somebody on it as quickly as possible. We start vetting people and, and then ultimately, hopefully, within 90 days or so, you'll be able to come to us with an excellent recommendation for us to vote up or down.
Randy?
Yeah, just a quick comment. The most irresponsible thing we could do is punt this to a new council. So, time is precious. We have a meeting next week. We have 2 more official council meetings. And, I certainly would hope, given the difficulties we've had here, that this council, who is at least experienced in dealing with this issue, is the council that doesn't move it to potentially 4 or 5 new members sitting up here.
The last time we hired an executive firm, we got Chief Cornett.
And me.
Oh, and you. Well,
Oops.
obviously, but we knew you were getting it. And we reached out, and I was back and forth in this, trying to figure out what we need to do. And the last time we tried it, we threw everything against the wall and tried to see what stuck. And like I said, I was $25,000 out of budget expense, but we need to move forward on it. Then the department is, they're uncertain what's going on. I think they need to know what we've been telling them all along is this is the plan. This is our actions, what we're going to do. But yeah.
Jimmy?
Just want to confirm, this is unbudgeted, right?
That's correct.
And we passed the budget in late May. We didn't foresee this coming up? No?
No, or it would have been in the budget.
Where's it coming out of?
General fund, professional services.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? Nicole?
There was never a second for this motion.
Because as soon as he said his motion, you immediately jumped in and nobody ever seconded it.
You mean you mean the
Yeah.
mayor's
John,
The
amendment?
mayor,
I made a motion to defer it.
I correct. I- and
No
all I
one,
heard
no one
was that.
seconded.
You did?
No one seconded.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Nobody seconded it. So there's no, unless someone wants to second it, we're just gonna.
We're voting on the
We're voting
original.
on the original item on the agenda.
I don't think there was never a motion.
There was an original motion on that agenda, but not on the agenda item, but not on that. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Nay.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
All right,
Mayor Carroll,
Nay.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye,
motion passes.
thank you. Item C, approval of an amount not to exceed $10,000 for the purchase of 2 beach wheelchairs to be available to residents and visitors at no cost on a first come, first served basis. We have a motion and a second. You've got some information in your packet on this. We'll have some conversation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, so we are in the process of developing a beach wheelchair rent reserve program, very similar to how we manage the medical equipment closet. This is something that has been requested in the past. The main challenge has been where we store these devices. This particular brand, and I have to give a big shout out to Dr. Jim Smiley. He's helped me and identify the what he calls the Cadillac version of what a beach wheelchair should be. It's foldable, so it is more manageable. I'm requesting approval of an amount not to exceed 10,000 so we can purchase. The agenda says 2 beach wheelchairs. I believe we can get 3 with that amount. This would be something that could be funded through the municipal accommodations tax fund, combination of our miscellaneous account and non-capital tools and equipment. The way that this program would function is it would be on a first come, first served basis. Folks would contact through public safety, signed a form requesting the beach wheelchair. We would keep their contact information and a copy of their credit card in the event that those beach wheelchairs are not returned. They would not be delivered or picked up from specific areas of the beach, so people would have to come pick them up. I think with this particular brand, they are foldable, so those could fit in the back of a vehicle. They would only be for the day, we would not allow them to, or folks to keep them for longer than a day. There are companies on the island that do weekly rentals. I think that we want to make sure that these are accessible and available to as many people as possible. So, that it would be a very simple initiative. We could set it up and, again, just like Councilmember Moy said, there's been plenty of a conversation through real property particular about how to go above and beyond what we currently do to enhance access, particularly for folks with physical challenges and their ability to access the beach as well.
Mayor. Yes, sir. Is there any way we could just have 3 different spots instead of 3 people using them for a whole day? Have them at that spot, somebody could go down to the beach, bring it back up, somebody else uses it, go down to the beach, bring it back up. So it's more than just 3 people for a day, like a 42nd Avenue, 9th Avenue, and 21st Avenue.
We'll continue to look into the logistics of managing that. I mean, this is something that, they're pricey. So we want to make sure that we have control of, where they are at all times. So we don't have any storage, in some of those locations. So, they would be available to be picked up at the public safety building, and then folks can take them with them to whatever beach access they want to travel to.
comment and question of Desiree, because her and I had a fairly lengthy conversation on this today. I did speak with Dr. Smiley on this, and not only are they foldable and all this, ergonomically, they're designed to fit where they don't get bogged down in the sand. I mean, he's done an extensive amount of discussion with this company and investigation. But Desiree, you also shared with me other beach communities, and one of the issues we just got to recognize, we put this program in place. It's not going to be 2 or 3. Right. We have a lot of people coming to the beach. This would be a leading beach effort for ADA access. But this is the forefront. I think of something else that we do really need to look at and recognize, as Desiree suggested, that it will be a growing program, probably one that would have some local storage needs, as the mayor suggests. But Desiree, if you would share what you shared with me about other beach communities, how many they have and how this program has had success.
Well, the only other community that we have
Yeah.
looked at that have a similar program is Folly. They currently have 4 beach wheelchairs, but they're expecting 2 before the next season. So they'll have a total of 6.
And I, by the way, I may have misspoke. It might have been Dr. Smiley that was giving me numbers from other beaches, but they were significant numbers over time as this program, I hate to say it this way, gained traction, with these.
There are
wheelchairs.
other beach communities,
Yeah.
particularly in Florida, where they have chairs available, and typically there's one community, I can't remember, I think it was Delray Beach, maybe, is it Delray Beach? I don't know.
There
But,
is one.
And it was, they kept them at the rec center, and they were different type, but they were, they could pick them up at the rec center, and that was very convenient for everybody.
Yeah.
So there are other communities doing it, but just here locally, I guess it's Folly.
Yeah, we don't need to try and solve logistics tonight, but
Right.
John,
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Number one, this is a relatively low cost, easy way for us to pilot doing something that we really care about. So it to me is a no brainer. Number two, 2 suggestions. One, there's a lot of real estate on the back of that wheelchair, and some local businesses might be willing to help sponsor. And 3, second suggestion, we should throw some GPS chips on these bad boys as well.
all right, Nicole?
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item D is discussion of wage and compensation study implementation. We've been waiting on this. You've got a piece in your packet around various options on this. John, I don't know if you or Desiree want to provide any background, just kind of what's happened in the last 30 or 45 days before we look at options.
I'd love to talk, but Desiree is gonna be much more educated on what's going on here. So I'll let Desiree take it.
No problem. So like Chair Pounds stated, in your packets, you have a preliminary schedule that shows the total implementation costs of several of the options that have been presented and discussed through personnel for the wage and compensation study. I say this in big capital letters, preliminary. We are going through each employee's current salary adjustments, and there are some outliers that we're still working through. However, the numbers won't change that dramatically from what you have in front of you. We have included fully loaded costs. That's something that the personnel committee did not have last week when they met, and something that we promised to provide to you all, because it will help in understanding and sort of formulating a plan for what implementation looks like. I'll just briefly explain the schedule that you're looking at. The first section, you can see the impacts of bringing employee salaries to the new minimums. Those are the new range minimums that have been established and recommended by the consulting firm Evergreen that we're working on. Every other option already includes the minimum, which is bringing employees to the new minimum. That would only apply to those employees that their current salary is below the new minimum for that range, for that job description in that new range. So you can see the totals there. You can see the number of employees that would be receiving adjustments. Just a clarification, when you see the category general, that includes all of the staff in City Hall, including the building department, everybody from the recreation department, everyone from the public works department, and the admin and salaried staff from both the police and fire. Then we have fire and police as a separate category. going through again, the options, the current range penetration, that is the most costly option that's been presented. And that means that employees would be adjusted and brought into the new range at the same rate and the same level that they're currently at. So if an employee is at 40% of above the minimum of the new range, of the existing range, they would be put in at 40% above the new minimum of the new range. So that's what the current range penetration essentially does. The second option is current range penetration capped at midpoint. So if there's an employee that is 30%, or a 30% increase would have them exceed the new midpoint of the new range, their percentage increase would be capped at whatever that new midpoint is for that job description and that position. The third option is a step placement. As you all know, we've been talking through a separate or different adjustment method for police and fire. It's typical to see step tenure, a step pay plan in those types of organizations. And that's something that they asked of the city from the very beginning when we started this process. So that's a consideration that's been given and included in the implementation plan. And that would basically just take tenure into consideration. So based on years of service, that is where they would be placed in a particular step. During the personnel committee meeting, we discussed options for implementation, and that the options for implementation could look different among departments. You could have a current range penetration capped at midpoint for all general employees, which includes all the departments that I mentioned earlier, and then an adjustment based on tenure for police and fire. So the two hybrid options include and consider a current wage penetration for general, which is the one at top in the blue, and a step placement for police and fire. One thing that we heard from the personnel committee last week was that they wanted to go above and beyond and exceed, I guess, the minimum, particularly when it comes to police and fire. That is where historically we have the most issues with recruitment and retention. It's not something that we're alone in. It's something that nationally you're seeing that, particularly in police. We're not seeing that much on fire. Recently, we've actually received a lot of good applications for fire positions, but it has happened in the past, and they're just difficult and difficult positions to recruit, train, and maintain. So that's, I think, part of the reason I think a council decided to make that a priority when it comes to what those adjustments would look like. So the step placement has the highest impact when it comes to those two departments per se. So at the bottom, you can see what the fully loaded impact to our salary budget would look like. I don't think we don't have the final report, the final report's not done. One component that is still being looked at as part of the final report will be an analysis of benefits as well. See if there's any opportunity to do anything different there. But I wanted to give you all an update on where we were, what the preliminary numbers are, and then forecasting how to implement that ideally this year.
Philip, if I may, just reemphasizing what Desiree said, the discussion we had in personnel committee one is this is not an attempt to minimize and do the least that we can do. And there's two things. One is to get us in a competitive field and range with smart process-driven steps, and to leave administration and the city in a position to have an ongoing methodology where the debates don't have to occur every few years as to how to do this. And I think we had very thoughtful discussion in personnel committee about trying to solve an immediate need, but at the same time leaving future councils and administration in a position to be able to deal with things in a much more orderly and predictable fashion, and frankly to use it as a recruiting tool.
Mayor.
Yeah, number one, I think this is long overdue. I'm glad we're looking at this. I know we're having some difficulty with police maintaining because people want to come and get trained and then take off and go elsewhere. I think our public works probably is down a little bit too. Otherwise, I think we're pretty well staffed, but we need to be competitive. We've got to be competitive. Because most of the personnel cannot afford to live out here. They have to travel 45 minutes to an hour to get here and then to get home. And you don't get paid for that. I mean, we've got to be competitive.
John.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just to, I agree with everything that's been said up here so far, and thank you to Janice and Desiree, and certainly to our consulting group. And I think first of all, this is tonight just for discussion. We're still waiting on a few pieces, and I'm gonna guess you're looking maybe for some direction from us. So first of all, the cost of losing people, maybe to potentially restate some things, but the cost of losing and retraining and hiring, it's not just the cost of training. There are so many costs, from overtime to burnout to potentially resulting in more people wanting to leave. The costs of attrition of people leaving are significant and massive. And so while this, these are big numbers, we're not talking about small amounts. It's impossible to do the analysis, or I shouldn't say impossible. It would cost too much for us to do the analysis of how much it's costing us in attrition. But luckily, national organizations have done it, and many thousands of dollars per position. So the money we're spending here it's a wise investment in the future of our budget. The one number that or at least some thought I would like to see in addition to this, when we get to the decision point, and I'm looking at Debbie mostly, is some forecasting out, because we are dealing with, this is a one-time decision where we're resetting. We're saying our current ranges are not adequate. We need to move them. We've already talked about the philosophy that goes into how do we increase wages year over year. And I feel like as council, we had some good consensus there. It's kind of the hybrid approach for public safety and a more performance-based approach for general. Kind of restating some stuff for public. But the year over year increase that we want to set in place so that there's predictability for the staff, and so that there's not a different debate year after year or every 2 years when council changes. We feel pretty confident that we're there. So this decision is about a reset where we've looked at our current compensation and said our current compensation is not competitive. We're not where we want to be. We're losing people because of it. We're not able to attract the best talent because of it. And that's another piece that's really hard to quantify. Who are we missing out on because we're unable to attract them because our starting pay, our minimum ranges are too low. So we're doing all of these things. This discussion today is about that reset, that one point in time. How are we doing the reset? But it will have implications longer because of the compounding impact of pay increases. So to make this even more challenging, just to maybe have some thought, I'm just going to maybe give you some homework to help us think about what are the long-term implications of some of these decisions that we'll be making in the next few weeks, presumably.
Yeah, and I guess just by way of reminder, this year's budget has a little bit over $300,000 in it for totally loaded comp changes because of the wage and comp survey or some restructuring. So not that needs to drive our decision to this whole conversation, but that's what sits in our budget today. And I guess, John or Desiree, what's timing or next steps from your standpoint, getting to council with a recommendation? Your best guess, or?
We certainly want to move as quickly as we can. We certainly, but at the same time, we want to be very deliberate and thoughtful and not rush something just for the sake of rushing it, right? So, I mean, I think that from our perspective, in the next month and a half, we should be final. We should have had the opportunity to review each person and their recommended range. And for the consultant to complete the report, because they're looking and redoing all job descriptions. This is just one portion of what the work that they're contracted to do, as well as developing a compensation philosophy and a benefits analysis. Did I answer? Kind of,
Yeah, so-
sort of? I mean, we're looking at the next month or two.
End of October, November meeting, we can get something in place. Yeah. John, is that consistent with what you want?
Yeah, well, and maybe just to put that back, let's make it I was gonna suggest maybe a goal of October, October council meeting, having a recommendation. It sounds like that might be too aggressive for us.
You know what, John, just for you, we'll make it happen.
Well, I think, yeah, to your point, I mean, the forecasting is a critical piece. I would totally agree with that. That's not going to take a crazy amount of time on top of everything else, but that's doable relatively quickly.
And that's something we can maybe have for next Tuesday and just have another opportunity for some discussion next week.
Yeah.
We're ramping up the heat, are we?
I know, I was giving it a month. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Just add more pressure to council meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I just wanted to reiterate, Councilmember Pound said that the current budget includes that that adjustment of about 300,000. And that is included in the forecast. So when you see our budget and our forecast for the next 5 years, that number already is embedded in it. I mean, we're looking at some options that are 356, 400. So that would be the addition, I guess, to those numbers. So
I think that's why I don't think it's going to take a long time, but I think we're in decent shape based on what we already had in the budget. We just need to pick a path. So, anything else? Chief Cornett, you might as well come up because we've got 3 items for you here, sir. Item E is discussion and consideration of Marine Unit Agreement with Charleston County Sheriff's Office. You have that document in your packet. So Chief, you want to give us some background and kind of next steps? Please.
Certainly. And all these kind of go hand in hand with the Marine unit stuff. This is something we've been talking about for a while. It started with Sheriff Al Cannon. When he was in office, I approached him about our lack of Marine assets for our department. And it continued with Sheriff Graziano as soon as she got in office. Actually, before she was even sworn in, we met and had a discussion about that. And our initial discussion was just to build a partnership so that we could do that. She took it a step further than we planned. And actually, they upfitted a boat that they already had. And they marked it with Charleston Metro Marine Unit. And it is sitting outside of the police department now. It belongs to the sheriff's department. It is their property. It is covered under their insurance because they obtained it through a grant. However, she has given it to us to use. Obviously, the sheriff's department can use it whenever they need to as well, but it's here for us to put into the water to respond to calls we need to actively patrol. And she took it a step further than even just that and paid for training for 6 of our officers to become certified as boat crew members. And we have 4 additional that are being trained to actually operate the boats and everything in November, additional operational boats. So they've already been trained to drive the boat, to go out and to do things with it. She's providing additional training in November for more law enforcement boarding type things that'll be covered through them. There were some questions that were asked. I think most of them were covered. That training is through the national, I don't want to get this wrong, where is it at? It's NASBLA. It's the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators. And that has already taken place for 6 of our officers, or 4 of our officers. The other 2 are set to go in the near future for that boat crew. It is something that we will have an asset here in the water. While it's a benefit for us, it's also a benefit for the sheriff's department. Part of that Metro Marine Unit agreement that is included with this gives us the ability, if an emergency call comes out or a call for service comes out on Goat Island, Deweese Island, or anything here in the area, we would be the closest Metro Marine Unit asset so we can get there. And as Councilman Ward pointed out before, that time is critical when you have an emergency in this general area in the water. And so having an asset in this area is crucial for life safety and to give us the ability to help. In the past, we've just commandeered boats from the marina, and residents have been fantastic. They've actually said, come on, we'll take you. But that puts them in a situation where there's liability, puts them in a situation where maybe it's not the safest. or we've had to stand there and wait for DNR or Charleston County to come by and pick us up while we're standing on the dock to help them when they needed help on calls. This is just going to increase safety overall in this general area.
Yeah, I just want to comment too, that this summer, when DNR changed their designation of a no wake zone and extended that area on the intercoastal, we received calls and comments from residents asking, you know, this is great. It's something that I think the community has been wanting for a long time. But who's going to patrol it? Who's going to ensure that people are following that? And we had no answer because DNR would deploy folks based on availability. This would give us an added opportunity to enforce that on the intercoastal in the season. So I just wanted to make that point because that was something that was discussed at public safety several months ago. And I also commend Chief Cornett and his team for being proactive and looking at these options and at a low cost to the city, but increasing the level of service that we're providing to this community. And just want to give you another public shout out, Chief.
They did also upfit it. The motor that is on it was rebuilt. They have an additional one if this one goes down that is set aside for this boat. They redid all the lights, they redid all the wiring, all the equipment is new on there. And through our 1033 program, through the military surplus, we were able to obtain some brand new equipment like life rafts and things like that, that were still wrapped in the plastic that we now have that just cost us a drive to go pick them up and they're already here. So this is a low cost thing. It's already been maintained for the year and we will be responsible for the yearly maintenance of it.
Jimmy Ward.
Yes, sir. Motion to approve marine unit agreement with Charleston County Sheriff's Office.
Second.
Mayor.
Good discussion. Chief, number one, I think this is a great idea. But I know our staffing is tight. This is not something we're gonna have in the water all the time, going up and down the waterway. It's for emergencies.
It will be used for emergencies and those busy weekends when we know we're going to have an increase in the area. We just know that that typically leads to an increase for calls and it would increase or decrease our response time if we already have the asset in the water. I think this is also why you mentioned we were short. This is going to be a part of a recruiting tool as well. People want to be in the Marine unit. Some of the unit or some of the officers that have left in the past have indicated that they wish we would have done this when they were here.
And number two, in the past, we have had boats and we've had boat theft problems of equipment off the boats. Are we going to have a spot where we can actually have a boat lift to have that boat at the water? We can just drop her in and as opposed to having to launch it every time?
I would love to say that would be the case, but right now we're happy that this is coming through fruition for where it's at now. And maybe in the future, that might be something we explore, might look at our other programs that we have and other funding sources we've been able to tap into for other items. But right now it'll be stored at the public safety building, kind of there, but accessible to the sheriff's department. We'll get it close to the water when our season picks up so that we've got people that are there, but no, we won't necessarily have a lift to put it at yet.
Thank you. Good question, Randy.
Yeah, I just comment, I don't know whether, you know, I'm fully respecting, and I had the same question about personnel, you know, we're not patrolling no wake zones and doing things like that. However, reminder, our Marina Joint Ventures lease does allocate and give responsibility to the leaseholder to provide a space for the boat if in the future we determine that's a necessity.
Other questions, comments? Nicole? Oh, sorry, Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, I'm sorry, one final
Yeah.
comment. Might be something to look at as far as capital projects down the road, down the immediate road.
Yeah.
To get a lift in there. And that space that Randy brought up.
I think that's a great
It's
idea.
not different than
Great
the
point.
budget.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. Nicole?
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Next item is approval of purchase of 2 patrol SUVs for the police department. You can see where those are budgeted items and where they would be paid from. A motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Chief. Anything you want to add?
Not unless yet. We are actually approved for 3 vehicles this year. We anticipate purchasing another F-150. but they are not on state contract until October. So we wanted to move forward with the Durangos because there is a delay in being able to get those to us.
Everything's delayed. Yes, sir.
I had a question in Public Safety Committee and the chief cleared it up. This, the budget item here says 123. These are not $62,000 a piece.
No.
No, sir. They are on state contract. They're $30,000 a piece.
Okay. Yeah.
For them, the 123 was for all three
All
vehicles.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy,
Right.
for that clarification.
Nice setup.
They're not that nice.
Nicole,
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
thank you. Last item G, approval of transition from 40 caliber pistols to 9mm caliber pistols. Again, you see the budgeted item there, a motion and a second.
Motion approved.
Second.
Fire.
Anything?
This is pretty simple. We're just trying to fall in line with our partners statewide and on federal level. All federal agencies have gone to 9mm. State agencies are going to 9mm. Our local partners are going to 9mm. This keeps us compatible with them should we all find ourselves in a situation together.
What are you doing with the 40 caliber?
I'm sorry, sir.
What are you doing with the 40 cal?
So we will trade these in with the company and they do sell guns there. I think they're offering, like officers can buy their guns back at a reduced price, still more than what they're giving us for them, but that's, you can buy them from Amchar once they're sold.
Yeah.
I got plenty of them.
Again, just to that question, Ryan, the net is $6,000.
Yeah.
One with the trade-in, so. Great. Other questions, comments? Nicole?
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Last item is miscellaneous business. Our next meeting is 6 PM Tuesday, October 19th. Any other miscellaneous?
Motion to
business?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome.
Off record
Oh,
at
man.
7:57.
I did not think that was happening before 8.
That was good.